let's welcome Cliff Rigano to the Talk Toomey Podcast here. And Cliff, how you doing today, man?
Good, man. How about you? Thank you for having me.
I am doing well, a little rushed, but it's always good to talk to you, man. Well, let's dive right into it right off the bat, man. You guys just did Welcome to Rockville, kind of, when I saw you guys main stage name, the name on the banner for the main stage on some of this stuff coming up, I was like, hell yeah, man, Dry Kill Logic is back, man. So kind of talk about, just kind of getting those offers and kind of getting the band back together.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. It's been a surreal experience, one we're just incredibly grateful to be a part of. It's wild how time flies, and, realize the 20th anniversary of the album, and we had gotten a call late last year from the, wonderful team at Danny Wimmer Presents, and they asked our agent if we would be interested in playing a show and, kind of celebrating that milestone. And, man, it's just one of those things where it's like, how do you say no? And
right.
It's been an amazing experience because it's ignited a part of us that, just quite honestly, has sat dormant for a long time. And to be able to be engaged in that way again is really rad.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've got to kind of be in the same boat that I am. It's kind of like when people want to hear the music that you played 20 years ago, and they're like celebrating it now. Cause I mean, I know you guys lived through those lean years too, where some of the later primer tours I did, we were playing Joe's Bar and Grill and, whatever else. And it just kind of got a little ridiculous, man. So now seeing you guys and Snot and like all these just, the Union Underground, Spine Shake coming back around. It's awesome to kind of see the peers kind of popping back up and just going out and doing it again.
Yeah. I mean, we've kind of watched from the sidelines over all these years that we've been dormant, and it's been awesome to see, bands having continued success, bands like Nonpoint, out there working, continuing to grow, continuing to build, and just, develop and succeed. And then, over the last 4 or 5 years, seeing the resurgence of artists, from the genre originally, Static X, Cold Chamber. It's been really inspiring just to see how well received they've been. Mudvayne. And for us, I think that when the opportunity presented itself, we kind of recognized with, childlike wonder that this is another opportunity to revisit those moments, and, to do it together with the guys is awesome. So we're just super stoked.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's just been awesome to kind of see all the bands coming back around again. And then you guys also have a new song out, Now You Belong with the Dead. Killer track, man. And honestly, I was like, your vocals on it kind of reminded me of like Shine Down. Like when it first comes on, I was like, which, is a huge compliment because Brent's got an incredible voice, man. So hearing your voice kind of coming through the speakers like that, I was like, hell yeah, man, coming back around again.
Dude, I appreciate that. We really enjoyed the process of kind of putting it together. We had the framework of it for a few years now. And when we decided we were going to, return to playing live again, it felt like the perfect time to kind of wrap it up and finish it. And, we worked with Greg Thomas from End, who is just an awesome producer, creates an incredibly productive environment, just something that's, really responsive and great vibes. And, some things are the same, how you approach a song, how you think about writing. Some things are different, especially after 20 years. I don't have the same grit that I did, back in 2004 on my voice, but right. Singing is now developed and evolved. So, we just try to write the best song possible. And in this one, it felt a little bit more melodic at times, but still like something that felt right. So I'm just glad that, that you appreciate it and that it's getting a warm reception because, ultimately the audience is the final arbiter of success. So.
Yeah. And, back in those early days of like trying to write songs, I mean, it was always like riff farms, it was just like this riff goes into this riff and that riff and this riff, and it's all about the riff. And, being much more mature as we are now, we can kind of, like actually, how about we do like a verse, chorus, maybe a bridge, actually have like some structure here and not just like the weird death metal part, like out of nowhere or something like that.
And we crave structure as we learn more.
Right. And craving structure is, so against, going back out and touring and things like that. Like, if we were to do something again, man, that's the one part I'm like, man, do I really want to like sleep in a van and all that stuff again? You're just like that. Creature comforts are going to kind of come back around again.
Yeah, and I mean, again, right? Everything now is with measured intent. I don't think
Yeah.
I can compete with the 20 something version of myself. I
Right.
don't think I have the same things I had back then. Hopefully, I'm a little bit wiser and understanding the guardrails. And when we go out and tour and when we play, and tour I use is a very loose term, but when we perform consistent numbers of shows, I think we do it with the right approach and not, to your point, not bite off more than we can chew.
Right. So how was the show at Rockville? How did everything go?
Yeah, dude, it was awesome. I mean, the whole thing was surreal. We've never played a festival before. We've
Mhm.
never been on, crazy huge stages with all of this.
Were you not on Ozfest?
No.
Oh,
We,
really?
we wished we were. But I mean,
Okay.
we toured a lot, but never done the festivals.
Okay.
Closest we kind of got was Gigantour, but that was not the magnitude of this.
Right.
So it was just crazy, man. You realize in these moments that, the Danny Wimmer Presents model is just a master class in, audience experience, in artist relations, in production, and just to be in a conversation is a surreal experience to be, kind of mentioned alongside all of those artists on that, ad mat, and to be in the areas where the other folks are, and just to see it all. I mean, I don't know if there's another comparison, and if there is another band out there that has something similar, I'd love to know about it. But it is wild to return to these similar settings that are just completely different and not in the same frame of mind that we were back then. But it's awesome. It's great. And we're just incredibly thankful to be a part of any of this, and just super stoked for everything to come.
Is there any fanboy moment, catering or anything you look over and you're like, holy shit, that's blah, blah, blah?
I'll be honest with you, man, the whole thing is a fanboy moment. Like, from the second you walk in or drive into one of these things, you're just kind of, overwhelmed by the level of production. Like, wow, people are really taking care of you. They get you where you need to go. And you go and you watch, you witness how the stages are built and how the gear comes to life and the load-ins and the load-outs. And it's all so synchronized. And again, it's just a high watermark for how things like this should work. And, you're driving through the infield of Daytona, and it's, you can't help but just stare at everything. And so it's all for us, I think, especially the first one, a fanboy moment. And I don't anticipate that going away anytime soon. But yeah, it's just been great.
Yeah, I've done media at Louder Than Life here because I'm in Louisville, and I've done media at Louder Than Life for like 10 years straight. And it's still like, I'll be in the media area and I'll look over it, and where the media area is kind of in between the buses and the main stage. So so maybe they might not be coming into the media tent, but they have to pass by. Yeah. And so sometimes you'll just be standing there and you look up and you're like, oh, there's Marilyn Manson walking by, or the year Kiss played. We knew they were about to come out, but we didn't know how they were going to come by. And so I stayed kind of at the edge of the media tent, and all of a sudden all of Kiss rode by on golf carts in full regalia. And I'm like, the 10-year-old kid in me is like, holy shit, there's Gene Simmons like right there. It's so awesome to kind of be around this stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, you turn around, you're like, oh my gosh, there's the dudes from Motionless in White. And like, you're like, holy shit, there's the guys from Korn. And, oh my gosh, here's the guys from ICP. And it's just this whole like, where the fuck am I?
How did this happen?
Again, we just never had these experiences to have context against. So it's all just wild.
Yeah, and you're right on the Danny Wimmer stuff, because when I go set up, I'll get in there early, and I can go out on the grounds and kind of look and see how everything's being set up, and it's so pro, and everything is just everything is just going up beautifully, and it's strategically, and they got all the I think the first year, Louder Than Life, they didn't have enough porta potties one day, and the next day we showed up and it was like 3 times the amount of porta potties somehow showed up overnight. So yeah, it's crazy how they get everything together and just put on a great show.
Yeah, and again, it's responsive, which is the most important part. Like, throughout the festival, it's like, hey, it's getting hotter in Florida. We're going to drop the price of water. We're going to bring in more misting tents. We're going to have more cooling areas. And you're like, wow, this is it's very thoughtful, and it's rare that you see that level of detail anywhere in life. So
Right.
to experience it as a fan, to be a part of it as a band, it's all just awesome.
What's even cool, like, they'll have those water stations, it's tap water, but I mean, it's still water,
Yeah.
and to where, growing up, going to Warped Tour and things like that, it was like, you weren't getting anything for free, you're
Seriously.
buying everything. And it's so funny too, like, even when you look back at like that Woodstock 99 documentary, and I remember being a kid, well, not a kid, I guess I was around 20 at the time, but I remember being that young and thinking they're price gouging. And then when you hear it now, you're like, God, I would love for like a $3.50 water at a show. But
Yeah,
back then
right.
I was like, they are ripping everybody off at this place.
Yeah, it is wild to think about how it's all evolved, and
Yeah.
all the different pieces of live events and experiences. And yeah, it's all crazy, man. It's all so nuts.
So let's kind of go back a little bit on Dry Kill Logic, man. Kind of talk about that period of time in between, the 90s, the early 90s, into getting signed to Roadrunner, like the kind of those early days of kind of hashing it out, and like, did you ever want to give up, or were you always like, we're building and building and building, and finally Roadrunner comes calling?
Yeah, I mean, we sold our soul to rock and roll, many moons ago, and when we began it, I think that it just began, and we were just all in from the start. We started in Westchester County, which is a little bit north of the Bronx, and it is not necessarily then nor now a mecca for live music and building a scene, especially not in those early 90s, where you really needed a few key components like a radio station, retail outlet, some sort of editorial component like a local fanzine or something. It wasn't the same. It had one great music venue called 7 Willow Street, which is about a 550 cap room that was theater style. And it used to get all of the shows that couldn't sell in Manhattan. So a lot of like first album Seven Dust, first album Rob Zombie, first album Manson, early ICP, like all of those like formative 90s bands would go through there as an alternative to New York City, whether they could or couldn't sell the ticket. That was just an observation. But so we would have the opportunity as a local band to open for all the bands that would come through there. And I think in those years, being a part of that scene really set the tone for that desire. And, when you have the opportunity to play somewhere like that locally, you're just kind of in it in a way where it never really ends. You don't have a chance to think about, should I quit this because it's like every 2 months or 3 months or some awesome local opportunity for you to play with a big band. So we were very, fortunate that in those years we had that venue to kind of work within and work around. We would meet bands that would come in and play there. Then we would go. So, it became this hub for us. And we released, 3 CDs independently in those years, and bought a crappy van and drove up and down the East Coast and played anywhere we could for any money you'd pay us. But I was, 23. There was nowhere else for me to be, and I'd be painting closets somewhere at that point if I wasn't doing this. So we were all in from the beginning, and then that allowed us to kind of shape and learn, so that when we met Eddie and Rob from Scrap 60, who we were talking about earlier, we were in a position that we could understand the benefit of producers and, the nuance of songwriting, and just, those years really helped us grow. And by the time we got to the Roadrunner opportunity 7 years after we started, which at the time didn't feel that long, but now looking back, especially against today's, calendar of success, feels like a lifetime. It's just the way it was. So,
Yeah, it was funny actually looking back on it, when you're in your teens and 20s. 6-7 years is an eternity, and it feels like it's never going to happen, and life goes on. But like now, when you think back like 6 years, you're like, that was like yesterday. Like, like 2010 seems like yesterday. I'm like, really? That was already 15 years ago. But like, it doesn't, it's just nuts how all that works out. I was noticing one of the early band names was Hinge, And I was wondering, it would be nice if you could at least got that copyright and kept it. And like when Hinge came out as an app, you could have like, got a nice payday then.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny when we when you sign your record deal, right? There's like that last paragraph above your signature line, and it says basically, we allude to the idea that everything in here is factual, and we can do everything that we're saying we're able to do in this contract. And we had never copywritten a band name. I mean, we're kids, right? Like there's no other band around here named Hinge, so we'll just be named Hinge. And when we got to the point, Roadrunner didn't copyright check anything at that point. And when we produced the record, all of a sudden, right before the record came out, somebody did an IP check and found out that in music there was a studio that owned it for that particular like group of copyrights, like music, reproduction, recording, etc. And they tried to negotiate, and unfortunately those negotiations were unsuccessful as that dude had all the leverage. And I think that was the beginning of the point where Roadrunner was like, all right, what the fuck is going on with this band? Because we, now you have to repress all those albums, and then you have to repress them again, because we went from Hinge to Hinge AD to Dry Kill Logic. So now they're in on 3 times the product that they have to scrap. And they're like, my P&L is out the door already. So,
are there Hinge CDs out there? Like, did some see the light of day?
Yeah, some saw the light of day because they were starting the promotion. So more promotional copies. I don't think we ever retailed any with the name because that's where we would have gotten in trouble. But I do think the promotional ones were fine to go out because no money was made. So there's a few folks, by a few, I mean probably none, that still have that CD. But I know that there were a few at one point.
Oh, hey, there's some that I think I told the story a while back, but I had a band prior, or I was in a band prior to Primer, local band out of Nashville. We sold a couple thousand CDs. Very similar to your thing. Any big band that came through, we were the opening band, that whole thing. And I saw I have an alert on my phone for my old CD for eBay. Like I never had a copy of it because I was always the guy that gave them away. So if they ever pop up on eBay, I try to grab them. And a guy posted one a few months ago or before Christmas for like $250. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? Wow. So I messaged the guy, I talked to him for a minute. And then while I'm talking to him, somebody bought it. And I'm like, for full price. And I was like crazy. So I asked him,
wow.
I was like, hey, I was in this band. And actually I ended up knowing the guy who sold it because it was a promoter from years ago, but whatever. So I got to talking with him and he was like, yeah, some guy in Europe bought it. And I was like, what? Why? Like we never made it out of the South, like let alone over there. So I told my dad the story and my dad's like, hey, I have an extra copy from when my grandmother passed away. He grabbed all her CDs. He's like, why don't you throw it up there and see what happens? I throw it up there for $250. Boom. Within like 2 hours, someone bought it. I'm like, I messaged this guy. I'm like, what is going on? Like, why? And he goes, I'm in a 90s. How did he phrase it? A 90s like hardcore and new metal group. Okay. And we're trying to preserve all of the 90s music. And your guys' CD was one of our white whales. So like, he was like pumped that he got it. I'm like, all right, dude. Like,
you didn't preserve it though. Like historically kind of.
Like cataloging it.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, man, that's cool. I appreciate the couple of $100 out of nowhere, but yeah, that's wild, man. How just how all that stuff, like we said, man, it's all coming back around again. Now you got kids out there that, weren't even born when the first Dry Kill Logic album came out and they're front row at Welcome to Rockville, like seeing one of their favorite bands. It's too much fun
by the new generation that's kind of gravitated towards the music. I mean, again, we started at cassette tapes. We ended at MySpace. I don't think there was ever a version of us that understood scale beyond you make the CD, you get the distribution deal, you put it in a store, it sells. Yeah. The idea of continuous connections with audiences is an ongoing sense of awe. It continues to reveal itself. We're like, man, this is so crazy how different the world is right now.
So our 6 degrees of separation we were talking about earlier, obviously the Primer connection. how did Bobby and Jason end up on the first album? I'm assuming through Eddie and Rob Caggiano, but just what was your initial relationship with those guys?
Yeah, I mean, my first job in the music business was working for a company called Concrete Marketing, and we were an independent retail marketing company. So basically, labels would hire us to get their record distributed in, a couple of thousand independent retailers nationwide, and then we had programs within those retailers where the bands would get activated. So end caps, midnight sales, listening stations, all that 90s vernacular on how you had to consume music, right? And I remember working there, and the Primer album came out, Introduction to Mayhem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that came out. I remember the album cover with the illustrated kind of comic book vibe, and I loved it. I thought it was a great record. And I remember working it and remembering it was a priority for Island, and they were on Ozfest. And I just remember being very close to the marketing of that album. And then it was awesome when we met Eddie and Rob, and we learned that they had actually produced it, and we were kind of working with the same producers. And I think it was Eddie's suggestion on a couple of songs just to have Jason come in, and he's super talented, and rest in peace. And we toured with them, and just always appreciated their friendship. And to have them on the record for us was a really big deal, kind of personally because we were fans, and professionally because they were a much larger band than we were when that record came out, and they probably still are to this day. So it was an awesome experience. And with the exception, I think, of Rob playing a couple of solos here and there on the other two, those are the only guests we've ever had on the album. So yeah, it was a good moment. It was cool.
It's funny, when I joined Primer in 2002, Jason wore the same Dry Kill Logic hoodie every day on tour. And so like now if I see photos and he's wearing the Dry Kill Logic hoodie, like I know what tour that was, because I mean, it was literally every day, every show. Like it wasn't, he took it off and got on stage. He wore it on stage every night. It was wild.
That's awesome, man. That tour is a lot of fun. I mean, again, there was a camaraderie there that because we just had a lot of shared friends and mutual relationships, and those are the good times. Those are the good times for sure.
Yeah, and it's definitely, it was tough when Jason passed. I was kind of hoping, I've been doing the podcast for 10 years, and even the first episodes, I was like, I don't care if I'm involved. I just want to see Jason and Bobby do something again. And then obviously losing Jason, and then almost losing Bobby, it was just like, it was about to all come crashing down there for a minute.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I just have such fond memories. And to your point, it's a shame about Jason, and I'm just excited to potentially catch up with Bobby and just spend some time reminiscing about all those clubs and all those days, man, because we played some awesome shows. And there's just a magic, I think, about those times, because so many of them, at least for us in those moments, were the firsts, and those are the ones you remember.
Yeah.
Bigger and whatever that success is defined by. It's those first moments that really connect you. And I remember on that record, like, that was a magical time for us, that first album. So everything associated with it will always be looked at with rose-colored glasses.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was like Primer adjacent at the time, kind of around in the ether around those guys, and it just that old time period. I mean, even my prior band, and just going to see shows and just being out, and being 20, 21 years old, you can't beat it. Like when everything's kind of coming together, man.
I remember Bobby had a shirt. I still think of it every time I think of Louisville. He had a shirt and it just said Lou Evil. And I remember now every time I hear Louisville, I just think of that shirt. Every time I hear that city, I'm like, man, I think about that shirt. I think about Bobby.
Yeah, it's funny. I moved here to basically join Primer, and then I'm the only one left. Like, Bobby's in Dallas, Jason's passed away, Preston's up in Indy. It's like whatever else. Kobe's wherever. I think Kobe's up in New York somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. Kobe's up in New York. Him and Jay still talk all the time. So
yeah.
I love Kobe too. Yeah.
But so kind of the other stuff, kind of leading up to Rockville, you guys didn't play any warm up shows. You just said fuck it, and like let's just Go out there and see what happens, Talk about
Yeah,
that.
forget to be a bear, be a grizzly, right? We there was no warm up, no jumping up onto somebody else's set, no testing it out and seeing what happens. It was 7 songs, 30 minutes, 20 years later, let's go. And that's just part of it, right? It's like it's gotta be a little bit like that. Can't be too easy. And let's be honest, right? You can play 100 warm-up shows and still get to that stage and everything can fall apart. So there's no warm up you can really do for the moment. So just get into the moment, and let's just deal with it.
Are you a butterflies guy, or did you have any different emotion kind of walking out on that stage?
No, I mean, it's nervous energy, right? But the best kind, the kind that's like there's something really exciting in front of you and you take it very seriously and you want to do the best you can because you realize how awesome it is. That kind of like, oh my gosh, and you move so fast through the time leading up to it that like you only have a few points of reflection along the way. You don't spend a lot of time. At least I don't spend a lot of time in those those moments where anxiety can get away from you. I just would rather rehearse, or I'd rather go, walk a mile, or I'd rather just go figure out a way to not be in that moment. But yeah, nervous energy in the best way, I'd say.
Could you see the audience, excited that you guys were there singing along, like see we're not just the band at 2:00 in the afternoon, like where the people are excited to see us.
Yeah. I mean, Florida loves its metal, and it's going to go from the second they get there. They're going to expect it, right? And that's the thing I appreciate about that audience is like, man, they were just into it and just ready to go. And it's 97 degrees and a 75% humidity point, and nobody's slowing down. Everybody's still got energy because it's early in the day. So time for us was great. No problems there. It was really cool to look out and you see shirts and you see folks that are just singing along, and like there's a recognition of the music that I think is most impactful for us, because again, we've been away for a generation now. And the folks that are fans have lived with this music maybe for longer than we have, and to see them so excited to have it played live, it's awesome. It's just it's like, wow, I didn't realize that part of it. I just thought, you get on a stage, you go, and you do some stuff, but then you see the reflection in the audience really appreciating it. And maybe these are just the things that I've not been as close to over the time I've been away, and it's just been awesome to kind of reflect in that.
And I know you've got a few more festivals this year to go. And did I see like a local show, like a good New York show?
Yeah, we got 2 of them coming up. We're doing Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Monarch on June 13th, and then we're playing Dingbats on June 14th. And these are like smaller, intimate club shows, but really exciting again because this feels a lot closer to where the band has always been historically. And again, you have an audience that's very engaged, and we get to play for a longer time and get to kind of go through the catalog a bit and celebrate the Dead and Dreaming, but also play songs we've never played live, or we haven't played in 20 years, or only played overseas. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff within the catalog that like has never really been played on U.S. shores or ever before. So just excited to do that kind of stuff. And that's not something we'll have the opportunity to do on the festivals. It's just a different environment.
Right. Any more new music sneaking around, waiting to come out?
We wrote these songs, the singles, as this era of Dry Kill, Vices, Don't See Ghosts, and Now You Belong with the Dead. And we wrote them in 2016, 2017. And Now You Belong with the Dead, we had the framework for. We finished it, just when we announced these shows. We had such a great time kind of putting it all together and just writing. Again, we're all friends, we're all close, and we enjoy each other's company and trust each other's judgment. So we do want to get back into the studio once this run of dates is complete, and then start the process of writing another body of work. I'd call it an album, but I'm not married to the idea of releasing all 11 songs at once. What I am married to the idea of is having a collective body of work that can be released to an audience at a pace and a cadence that is proper, but not just doing a single or two here or there. Let's build a body of work and then find the right way to put it out into the world.
Yeah, I like one of my favorite bands. They've been last couple of records, they've been doing they release a single and then they wait a while and then they release another single. But when you listen to that single, you also go back to the first single. So you got two going, and then the third comes out and you kind of do that. And then the fourth comes out, and it kind of keeps the songs, I think, alive longer when you can kind of stagger and let people kind of reconnect with them every couple of months.
Yeah, and again, right to your point, like if you're going to go out and you're going to do some festivals, drop a song or two, right? Give it a round of work, put out some content, and I think that's what the cadence we're trying to get to is, what's the right way to do it? And to be fair, I don't know if I know the audience is, appreciate music in a certain cadence. I don't know if the industry is prepared to accept music in that cadence. The long play format still kind of commands how the industry operates. So if that's the best way to release music in order to take advantage of the scale opportunities we have with festivals and, placements and PR, I'm open to that too. So folks far smarter than me will help come to the right conclusions.
Working in the internet media for 10 about 10 years now, no one knows anything. Nobody knows how. Everybody can tell you need to release things on this day, on this day, on this day, and then the one thing that you release Thursday at 8:30 p.m. is the one thing that goes viral, and you're like, I have no idea. Like I give up.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I think that's something that I've just been most fascinated by is like the fact that there's just kind of no rules and you kind of set your own path. And one of the artist stories I've been fascinated by for the last few years, it's not metal related necessarily, but the story of Russ, the rapper, where he started years ago. He started basically from nothing, and he said, I'm just going to release a song a week. And, I'm going to write a song a week. I don't know if it's going to be any good. It might not be long. It might not be great, but I'm going to just write a song a week and we're going to see what happens. And over time, he didn't necessarily do it as a gimmick. He did it as a strategy. This is just how I'm going to release my music. And over the course of the year, and he shows all his receipts from his, distribution payments to his audience statistics, everything. Just a continuous cadence over the years. The music gets better, the audience gets bigger, the reception gets wider, and the success grows. And again, it's not a perfect one-to-one on what we would do, nor a recommendation on what anybody else should do. But it is really interesting to see when you are focused on creating, great music and putting it out and just continuing to grow and evolve as an artist, you see all that other ancillary stuff occur. So I'm always just kind of fascinated by the stories where the music and the art is first, and then the corresponding commerce and scale comes second. It's just rare that that's the way things work, anywhere in life, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Then you got the guys that, how do you market it? Some people are like, I'm going to do every interview and talk to everybody, and everybody's available, and you can see, what I had for dinner on Instagram, and you go just all in, or you can be sleep token and nobody knows who you are and you don't ever do an interview and somehow you're number one. It's just like you truly never know. I mean, honestly, Tool was like that, when we were growing up, nobody knew what Tool looked like for a while, or they, were never in the videos, they never were in the photos. You might go see them, but Maynard's in the back, stuff like that.
I gotta tell you, man, that Sleep Token, that new record, like to your point, I think Tool is the best comparison. Even musically, it's like the newest generation of Tool. There's the melodies and the heaviness and just the complexity and the layers. It's really interesting to listen to. I'm like, my God, man, this is some really great pitching and just so much stuff. It's so textured. It's really, really impressive melodic work. So to your point, I think that Tool comparison is not even necessarily musically, just approach wise.
Right.
Really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And in this day and age to keep anything secret for a while is how this happened. But well, Cliff, man, I appreciate you taking the time tonight, and good luck on the road. Good luck with the new songs and all that good stuff. And we will talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.